I recently saw this post from a teacher saying she doesn't know if she would lay down her life to protect her students in case there was violence in the building. And a lot of people were like, that's an inside thought. You shouldn't say that out loud. I disagree. I think these should be outside thoughts. I think we should really start confronting the idea that teachers are expected to be frontline soldiers now because we're so used to violence in our...
As a former teacher myself, this was a serious question that I had to ask myself often. What would I do in this situation? And it wasn't because I wanted to think about these things. It's because it started to feel like it was inevitable. Like I was going to have to make that decision. And the job description of a teacher was changing, as well as the risks. It was all of these thoughts and fears and realities that inspired me to write my short story, It Was Just Another Day in America. All about the fact that we've become far too comfortable with the violence that we see in our schools, as well as the expectations that we are putting on our teachers. Here's a sneak peek. It was just another day in America when Jasper's mother walked him to the front door. She held in her hand a thick leaden vest. As she knelt down before him, she asked, "Do you remember the combination to your bunker? 17, 24, 8, 19, 22. And what do you do when you get inside?" I don't say a word. That's right. You don't say a word. Mrs. Smith started the class as she always did, teaching the kids about a special time in history. This was always Jasper's favorite part of the day. He was fascinated with ancient worlds, old societies, and forgotten cultures. He loved to learn about the way human beings once... An alarm suddenly interrupted Mrs. Smith, and the students knew immediately what to do. They pushed over everything in front of them and ran to the bunkers in the back of class. These bunkers looked like lockers, only large enough for a tiny child to squeeze inside. After locking the door, Mrs. Smith broke the glass behind her desk and grabbed her emergency gun. She watched as the kids continued to enter their combinations, for she was not allowed to enter her bunker until every student had entered theirs. Bunker doors opened and kids climbed inside, but not every student remembered their combination. Some were left standing there, staring at the flashing red lights indicating a wrong password had been entered. Their eyes filled with panic. "Mrs. Smith," they yelled, "I don't remember my password." They cried, "Help me, help me, help me." But teachers were no longer given access to the combinations of their students' bunkers ever since that one teacher in Arkansas had used them to slaughter her entire class. All Mrs. Smith could do now was order them to call their mothers or fathers and keep trying to remember. Jasper entered his combination, 17, 24, 8, 19, 22, and turned to watch the frantic class. Kids crying as they called their parents, Mrs. Smith standing in front of the class with her loaded gun, students climbing into bunkers. He could hear gunshots getting closer, screams, cries, threats, and promises. He heard bodies falling to the floor outside. He heard demands being yelled by police officers and infiltrators. He wanted to help. He wanted to help everybody, but there was nothing he could do. And so, with guilt in his heart, he climbed inside his bunker and closed the door behind him. The world went silent within.